Dadoo is an MBA himself, and after doing his MBA, he worked in the private sector for about 3 years. He started his career with Procter & Gamble, who a lot of you are going to be going for that job 2 years hence. Then he worked in a company called Core Parentals in Hyderabad, and then in ACC during 82-83. After which he cleared his civil services, and then he's been with the government for a very, very long time now, almost about 29 years that he's been there, and worked across sectors, so a whole lot of sectors that he's been working with. And what we were just talking outside this space where he is in right now, which is the foreign trade.
Let us first understand what is foreign trade. Foreign trade is all about imports and exports. Who's doing foreign trade? It's the private sector who's doing foreign trade. What does the government do therefore? Government facilitates foreign trade. How do we do this? We come to know in our subsequent slides. Now, what is our vision for India as a major trade player? This is what we want it to be, a major player in the world trade by 2020. In 1604, when Akbar died, can you guess what was India's contribution to world trade? Anyone? Yeah.
15 to 20%?
No. 50.
22% approximately.
Sorry? No.
60%. 60%.
No. It was about 40%. In 1604, India contributed 40% to world trade. Today it's less than 1.5%. So what we want to do as a major vision in this is to ensure that we become a major player in world trade by 2020. That means we regain our position, which was there in 1604, and in 1604, India was the richest country in this world. India was the richest country. That is why it was called all kinds of things, including Soni Ki Chidiya and all that. Right? Okay. So what we want to do, therefore, is ensure a very high rate of growth of exports on a sustained basis, and we want to assume a leadership role in international trade, commensurate with India's importance in the world, contemporary world. How do we do this? And it's very easy to put a mission like this. How do we do this? We have to double India's exports by 2014. So we have a comprehensive strategy between 2009 and 2014 to double India's exports. And the long-term objective is to double India's share in global trade by 2020. Mind you, doubling is from 1.5% to 3%. And that will take us more than 8 years to do. So it's not a simple job. We have lost a lot of ground, and to make up that ground is going to take a fair bit of time. How do we do this? What is the strategy? The strategy is there on the website. You can have a look at this, but I'll glance through and flip through and give you the essence of the strategy. Number one, there's a growing trade deficit. Why? Because we buy a lot of petroleum, fuel, food, and fertilizer. The 3 F's we buy in very large quantities, and therefore there's a growing trade deficit. There's an uncertain global scenario. US and EU are very big trading partners for India. Today they are in very bad shape, and as a result our exports are getting affected. Now, how do you achieve this goal? If you're a marketeer, if you're studying Kotler in marketing, you would have to devise a strategy. The Department of Commerce has devised a strategy, which I'll just list down very quickly, and then I'll show you the ingredients of that strategy. Number one, product strategy. Number two, market strategy. Number three, technology and research and development. Number four, build a brand image. India's product brand image has not been very good. We are past masters at sending a sample of one variety and selling goods of another variety. So that brand image has to change. And we have to rein in the import growth, because the imports are galloping and our exports are not matching up to that rate. We have a huge plantation sector, tea, coffee, tobacco, and things like that. We want to increase production there, productivity and profits. The Director General of Foreign Trade is the agency in the Department of Commerce which gives export promotion incentives. Export promotion incentives. Now, if you don't give export promotion incentives, the private sector says that it's not economically feasible for me to export. So one of the main tasks of this policy is to give export promotion measures wherever they are required to boost exports. Then, as I mentioned, the domestic standard for our goods has to improve. If you have to compete, let's say you have to compete by exporting this. Ahuja is, mind you, a very big exporter of this equipment. If Ahuja is not able to maintain its quality, it will not be able to compete with Japanese or Chinese or Korean or Taiwanese electronic products. So that's a very important thing. And then brand India promotion is equally important. Then exporters. The private sector feels that the transaction cost in India is very high. Why is it very high? Because coordinating with several departments of the government adds to time, and then when there are delays of time, transaction costs are very high. So we need to coordinate with the Department of Revenue, Banking, Railways, Shipping, Agriculture, Environment, Forest and Civil Aviation. Basically the port sector, the railway sector and the civil aviation sector. Unless the goods reach these three places, they cannot be imported or exported. Export capabilities in three sectors are extremely important because they're doing extremely well in these sectors. That's chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and agricultural products. I'll give you some figures very shortly. And we need to diversify our markets. Our exporters have basically looked at US and EU and have not ventured very much into Asia, Latin America, and Africa. These are very big markets. Now, what are the key divisions? How do we facilitate exports? These are some of the areas of the instruments by which we do this. We have what is called a special economic zone. I'll give you lots of figures. Let me just read down, run down these. Then we have a scheme to provide incentives for making infrastructure. It's called the ASIDE scheme. We provide market development assistance. I'll get into the details very shortly. We have multilateral and bilateral trade relations, trade promotion division. We have production and export of plantation crops. Trade defense is not actually trade promotion, but trade defense is required to protect domestic industry. I will not touch on this. Maybe I'll have a separate look at this some other time. Foreign trade policy, which gives you policy instruments and incentives. And then there is a DGCIS, which gives us complete figures of imports and exports from any country to any country. And that is also under the Department of Commerce. Let me give you some basic figures of how much money we spend on each of these. Export insurance sector gets about 30 crores. The Export Credit Guarantee Corporation gets 100 crores. Inspection Council, Market, you can read all this. This is just to give you an idea of the kind of money that is put behind this. Next. The most important scheme, as you can see here, is 800 crores for ASIDE. And why? Because we need to create top-class infrastructure if we need to do doubling of exports. That's extremely important. The other big scheme here is 200 crores to promote tea exports. 100 crores for spices exports. Spices are a very important item of our exports. And we do separate facilitation for the northeastern region and the scheduled castes sub. So if you look at all the total planned schemes of the Department of Commerce, we spend about 2,100 crores to facilitate foreign trade, that is exports. Let's look at the non-planned. Here we spent 2,922 crores, of which the largest amount again is 2,350 crores for export promotion. So the private sector has only to export and we give everything that is required for them to be facilitated, motivated, activated. Next slide. What is the foreign trade policy of this country? If I can put it very, very bluntly, for the 5-year term 2009 to 2014 for which this policy has come, number one, we need to arrest and reverse the declining export trend. In 2009, the exports had started declining. Number two, we need to provide additional support to badly hit sectors. But as a result of doing these two things, we have achieved a figure of $303 billion by March 2012. Our target is to have an annual export growth of 25% by 2014, which would mean doubling of exports by 2014. In 2009, obviously, the figures were in the range of 250 billion, then it dropped down. I'll give you all those figures very shortly. And the long term, as I mentioned, is to double India's share in global trade by 2020. What are the FTP instruments and what is the FTP policy for this year? It was announced by the minister about 10 days ago. Those of you who read the newspapers might recall, but I'll get into the details very quickly. First of all, we refund and rebate taxes on exports. Number two, we provide incentives to exporters. And the most important thing to my mind is that we make access to inputs easier. Number four, we improve productivity and competitiveness. In short, this is the strategy. Let's look at the figures.